Welcome to Solar Insiders, a podcast reporting on the people, technologies and policies shaping the world's biggest energy source. Presented by Sophie Vorath, the editor of Renew Economy and One Step Off the Grid, and Rachel Williamson, senior reporter at Renew Economy. Solar Insiders is brought to you by Pylon, the essential solar design tool to grow your solar business with quick and effortless proposals that will impress your customers. And Fronius, trusted worldwide for delivering reliable, smarter energy solutions.
Hello and welcome to Solar Insiders. My name is Sophie Vorath and I am the editor of Renew Economy and One Step Off the Grid. And joining me is Rachel Williamson.
It is good to be back with you, Sophie.
It has been quite the hiatus, hasn't it? It's first you went to Europe and then I went to Europe. I'm making us sound very fancy now, but personally, it was my first trip in 16 years. So that's, yes, so we had a bit of time off and we are back with a vengeance and with a huge week of news. Solar sharer offer. Oh my God. Everyone went crazy. The crowd went wild.
I've never seen so much discussion on one energy topic in the big newspapers as on this one.
No, me neither. It's even eclipsed cheaper home batteries. I didn't think that was possible, but Chris Bowen has gone and done it. And look, it's a fabulous thing to throw out there, free anything. But of course, after the initial excitement, the true Australian way is to go, wait, what?
What's the catch? What? And the catch is not that you have to have a smart meter, which is what a lot of
well, I mean, you do, but that's not
the catch.
That's not the biggest catch. That's an easy fix. There are multiple other catches which we will get onto a bit later, and we will also chat after the interview, today's interview, about All Energy Australia last week, which was a massive show. I think biggest yet. So yeah, we've got lots to discuss. But first, we will hear from Luke Menzel, the CEO of the Energy Efficiency Council, who, being who he is and what he's done for quite a number of years now, has a lot to say on solar sharer. Mostly good, but you know, it is really important to get the energy efficiency, thermal efficiency, electrification pieces right too. So let's hear from Luke Menzel, the CEO of the Energy Efficiency Council. Luke Menzel, welcome to Solar Insiders.
It's great to be with you, Sophie. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming on. And just when you thought it was safe to get on a plane and fly to COP30 in Brazil, the government goes and launches, or not launches, but unveils its solar sharer offer. My goodness me.
Announcements in the energy space come thick and fast.
They
stay on your
do,
balls
when
with
you
your
least
feet.
expect it. And it's big news. It's certainly it's a real headline grabber. Free power, what's not to like? As we have written about on Renew Economy, it's just this idea of adding another regulated offer as part of the DMO mechanism, and making it basically compulsory for retailers to offer a time of use product that's regulated and offers customers at least 3 hours of free power in the middle of the day, say 11 till 2. And yeah, it's, I guess, a product of our solar riches, and the fact that not only is there abundant solar on the grid in the middle of the day, but that is starting to cause a few problems for the market operator and for network companies, and sending prices negative, etc. So kill the two birds with the one free solar stone.
Two birds with one tariff, Sophie.
I just mangled the hell out of that. But it's done something, and mostly people are happy. But there's a bit of angst. But what I would love to hear from you, being the CEO of the Energy Efficiency Council, is what this means in that area. I mean, it's got to be a good thing, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, as you say, I've been CEO of the EC for about a decade, and the conversation around energy use has changed quite a lot over that period of time, not least because of the incredible success of rooftop solar. When I started in this job, more or less, like saving energy at any time of the day was a good thing. And also, we were actually pretty agnostic back in the day as to whether we were being more efficient with gas use or electricity use as well, because either way you were saving carbon emissions and you were cutting bills. These days we're in a very different world. On the one hand, there's a very clear decarbonisation pathway in the electricity system. Obviously, we don't have that same decarbonisation pathway in the gas system, so we want to get more people using electricity because we know that we can move the grid to a high penetration renewable energy system, and that work's underway. But the characteristics of renewables, and particularly solar, means that, as you say, like there's heaps of solar on the system in suburbs right across Australia in the middle of the day. In some cases generating issues with minimum system loads, so just keeping the grid up and running becomes a challenge for the market operator. And the value of saving energy in the middle of the day is not really there. In some ways, it's actually potentially unhelpful, versus the value of saving energy towards the end of the day, say between 6 and 9 p.m, like huge, because the solar's coming off the system, if not completely gone. And so you're inevitably using more expensive and often higher carbon intensive energy. So timing has become really important, which sort of brings us to the solar share, right? It's sort of interesting how it's captured the imagination over the last 24 hours as we record. I think the embargo lifted on this about 10 p.m. last night. This is actually replicating some offers that are already in the market from retailers. There's 4 or 5 retailers that have these sorts of things out in the market. Obviously, it's a big deal for the government to say, well, the default market, as part of the default market offer, this has to be offered. People still need to opt in to this, and so nobody's being forced onto a time of use tariff. But I think the really significant thing is it's starting the conversation that we need to have about how we're using energy and how it relates to the renewables. And importantly, when it comes to solar, the reality is that as we move to this new framework of thinking about when we use energy and how we optimize our energy use, there's benefits not just for the households that have solar on their roof. There's benefits potentially for all households that can kind of provide a service to the grid by smarter energy use. So I think it's a good conversation to be having. There's all kinds of specific things that we can do to take advantage of this brave new world. I think, we can go through them, Sophie, but like the ultimate sort of headline thing I would say is we don't want to turn every family into Australia into a prosumer. Like, that is not how this is going to work. Like, most households around Australia don't want to be sort of clicking away on their apps and kind of deciding when they turn their dishwasher on or something. Like, it's not a thing. To the degree possible, we've got to automate this, or we've got to have smart settings in appliances that take advantage of these sorts of opportunities. So consumers are getting a better deal, but not having to think about energy for one moment longer than they want to.
Absolutely, and I think that's as you're saying, it's a really clever way to do it. To just say, like, get everyone's attention. It's like waving the rattle at the baby, saying free. And everyone says, what? Free? And then we have to have a discussion about, how this is going to work, how, what it's going to require for consumers, as you say. There's some big behaviour changes involved, but then also what the industry has to bring, and also what the government then has to do as supporting policies to help the industry, automate, to help, we haven't even got smart meters everywhere either. I think that's another thing that I think is quite smart about this policy, is that it may speed that up as well, because I know the AEMC or is it the ACCC has a deadline for when we're supposed to all have smart meters, and I don't think we're tracking that well with it. So this may be a way to sort of snap everyone into gear and say, let's get that done at the very minimum.
Well, again, like it kind of activates the conversation and gets people thinking about it. I mean, smart meters, for a lot of their history. I'm based in Victoria. There was an early push on smart meter rollout, and for a lot of households, it's like, well, I've got this smart meter. What do I do with it? What is the benefit of it? And it's been a little bit unclear. Pegging it to this specific opportunity, which is, well, we're going to give you some free power in the middle of the day, provides an incentive to engage, and there is the opportunity to engage directly with the provider to get a smart meter earlier than you might have otherwise, which, as you say, is possibly a benefit. And I think there's it's kind of like a good way into the conversation about how all the different bits of technology sort of work together to actually improve people's lives. And so if you think about the tasks that we've got, we've got this, hopefully the solar on the roof, which is great. We've also got this big task in terms of electrification. So if you want to drive down emissions, and even if you're not too worried about emissions, if you're concerned about household energy affordability, in both cases, you want to be electrifying loads in households that are currently served by gas. The biggest loads in that context are hot water and space heating in those parts of the country that rely on gas for space heating. And again, Victoria's a key culprit there. And then obviously cooking's in there, but it's a very small amount of gas. But if you get all of those electrified, then you can actually disconnect from the gas network, which removes that recurring charge. That's quite a significant win. So yes to all that, but we need to be thinking about how we electrify and the quality of electrification. And depending on the technology you're talking about, quality can mean different things on the grid. For hot water, generally it's just about putting it on a timer and making sure that it's flicking on and doing its primary heating cycle in the middle of the day, which, doesn't require any sort of, great smarts or internet enablement or flex capacity. Like it's very simple technology. In fact, it's technology we've been using for decades, because back in the day in Victoria, the SEC,
Queensland in particular, was it?
Turned the hot water on in the middle of the night to soak up some of that coal base load. So it's using the same principle to soak up the solar on the grid in the middle of the day. Versus, the reverse cycle air conditioner. And in a lot of parts of the country, talked a bit about Victoria, but in places like Queensland and WA, the peak on the grid is being driven by air conditioning load for cooling. And that's a very significant issue. And so there's opportunities to, if you've got good thermal performance in your homes, and that's something that people don't often think about in terms of consumer energy resources, but here at the Energy Efficiency Council, we regard insulation as kind of fundamental energy infrastructure, because it allows you to do things like solar preheating and pre-cooling. Most air conditioners are installed in people's homes. They have simple timers in them. So if you're on the solar sharer tariff, there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't do some preheating or pre-cooling while you're not even at home. And actually, if you've got good thermal performance, you'll be able to kind of store that heat or that cool air in your home so that it's comfortable when you get home. You've heated your home for free with zero carbon electricity, and you're in really good shape. You can just top that up, and it's not putting as much load on the grid. And so how all those things fit together, and then like both at the site level, but also kind of like interacting with the energy system, is really important. It's a little bit of a leap for people to kind of think in that way, and they need support and guidance and good advice and good installers and all that sort of stuff. But that's what we're working on in the Energy Efficiency Council, is making sure those pieces of the puzzle come together.
I want to circle back to the insulation part, because you and I have discussed this, and I know that you guys have done some amazing work on that, and it's really the unsung hero of all of this in a lot of ways, because for a house that isn't thermally efficient, you can load shift all you want into the middle of the day, but you're going to get to the end of the day and need to cool again or heat again because it's all escaped, or it just isn't doing its job. And what we absolutely don't want is for people in low-income housing, people in poor housing stock who don't have much choice in the matter, renters, etc., being uncomfortable at the end of the day because they don't want to be stung by high power prices at the end of the day, and they're so sort of fixated on getting this free power window and that kind of thing. So, how do we solve that part of the problem? I know it's not wish we could wave a magic wand, but it's going to take a fair bit. What are some of the ideas the Energy Efficiency Council has had to sort of remedy that problem?
Well, the good news is we're on the journey. We obviously had a very unfortunate experience a number of years ago with the Pink Bats program, and that really set us back a decade.
It did, and it just still haunts. The minute you mention it, the media is a real culprit.
And that's why I mention it, because we've got to take it on head on. The Energy Efficiency Council at the time was advising the then government to say, look, you need to slow this thing down and do your due diligence. And we weren't the only ones. And so, there was issues with that program that had nothing to do with the technology. Like if you've got a deployment program that isn't properly set up in terms of quality and safety, then the wheels are going to fall off. And that's exactly what happened. And it's a tragedy. But that doesn't mean there isn't a role for, governments engaging with this particular technology, but doing it properly, right? It's not about the insulation. It's about making sure you've got a well-designed program. And the good news is both industry and government have been stepping up. So we, with partners, did a deep dive about 5 years ago into what it would take to reactivate government engagement with thermal performance as a energy transition pathway
to make insulation great again.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah, you can get some hats printed up there over there at Renew Economy. That sounds
and they will not be pink.
I would certainly buy one. So that was important. It basically created an industry-led roadmap, which had things for the industry to do, but also for government to do to reactivate in their space. There has been incredible sort of effort from a range of different industry bodies, not just the Energy Efficiency Council, but industry bodies that represent the insulation industry, including the Affiliated Insulation Industry Coalition, which have kind of been working through that to-do list. And then the EEC itself took on the task of revamping the insulation installer certification. So we're now certifying insulation installers, and that has seen governments come back onto the field. First cab off the rank was ACT that put minimum insulation standards into their rental code, and that's been there for a little while now, and that's working through the system. Going to that exact point that you just made, which is that often it is the most vulnerable in society, renters, lower income earners, people in social housing and the like, that are living in the poorest quality housing stock and are the most at risk when it comes to things like cold snaps or heat waves. They're also getting it in the neck when it comes to energy bills because they're having to use their heaters or their air conditioning so much just to keep their homes habitable. So that was a really smart intervention from the ACT. And I'm pleased to say that the Victorian government has followed suit both with rental standards, but also, importantly, as of January next year, reincorporating insulation into the Victorian Energy Upgrades Program, again, using EC certified installers. So look, we're getting there. It's been a lot of hard work from a lot of organisations, a lot of very passionate individuals that, like me, recognise that there's no way we get this transition done without kind of addressing the thermal performance of it because of the interaction with heating and cooling load. And particularly as we electrify, it's not a nice to have; it's a critical KPI. And it unlocks so much in terms of that flexibility opportunity. It's an enabler for getting the best out of that incredible solar resource that we've got on the system. So think RCAC, think thermal, think solar. Put those three ingredients together, and you've got warmer or cooler, certainly more comfortable homes, more affordable homes, and healthier homes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my colleague Rachel Williamson was saying she lives in Melbourne as well. And she was saying that she was looking into getting a battery through cheaper home batteries, and it was still a bit sort of on the pricey side, the size that they were looking at getting. And she opted instead to put some money into double glazing, which I think was a fantastic move. And I just wish there were more people advising that kind of thing. Like if I'm not trying to say it's an either or, again, like a battery is great to have as well. But, if you think of it in this way, now that she's got that, she will have that more thermally stable home that can do this load shifting, even without a battery. And she has the solar as well. So
you're turning your home into a thermal battery, actually.
Mm.
And look, you're absolutely right. It's not an either or. But with anything, and this goes to the efficiency of it all, if you do your thermal performance, that allows you to say we're on an electrification pathway. It allows you to right size your reverse cycle air conditioners so you're not over provisioning. And then so that's a saving at the outset. And then it allows you to run them efficiently because they're not sort of going like the clappers trying to heat or cool a space where the air's just falling out of the sides, which in turn takes load off the grid, particularly at critical times between 6 and 9 p.m, which in turn means that we need to do less grid augmentation, which is another way that we manage the cost of this transition, because ultimately, something that is keeping every minister in the country up at night is a wave of network costs that if we just let this thing keep running in the way that it's running is coming for us. And I mean, there's lots of debates about social license in the regions, Sophie. I think that's appropriate. We need to deal with that. I spend just as much time thinking about social license in the suburbs. Because, there is real concern about energy costs. There is a sense that prices should be going down, not up. There is an inevitable sort of investment in the system that we're working our way through because we are replacing so much energy infrastructure on the supply side. But we can leverage smart energy management, flexibility, and energy efficiency to manage those costs, because ultimately, unit cost is one thing. We have lots of debate about energy prices, but energy bills are a function of unit cost and volume. So if we can manage the volume bit of it, we can manage those affordability issues, and we can kind of maintain momentum and support for the transition, which we've got another few years to get through before we kind of like come out on the other side.
Absolutely. And I think some of the worries about this solar share offer is that if retailers are forced to do it, then they'll they're going to have to push those prices elsewhere, and they're going to have to recoup their, get their margins in elsewhere. But it'll be very difficult to argue against that if people can't, if the load shifting doesn't happen. Like I think this what worries me, the only thing that sort of worries me about this is that load shifting won't necessarily happen. People will still take advantage of that power, but then we still have these huge peaks.
So there's a consultation paper that just came out today. I haven't had a chance, obviously, to read every word, but I've had a flick through it. Probably one of the areas that we'll be providing some feedback on to the government is kind of like just the proactive engagement that will be required to make sure that people that are voluntarily going onto this program actually understand how to make the best use of it, because it is not just, tick a box and, she's apples. It does require a little bit of proactive engagement. Some of that will sort itself out because there's not that many people on the default market offer, and you have to opt in to this program, and so people aren't going to accidentally find themselves on it. But nevertheless, if people are seeking it out, they are excited about this opportunity. It's really important to have good information. It's like, well, hooray, you've got free energy in the middle of the day. Here are some of the ways you can take advantage of that, right? And even pairing it with a program which, puts a timer on your hot water system or whatever it is, like does some of that proactive engagement. Pretty cheap to kind of do those interventions, but we'll make sure that people are getting the most out of it.
From something that we talked about last week at All Energy, there is room here for the solar industry to kind of capitalise on this, as you mentioned, in that they've already got all these customers on their records. Some of them with solar, some of them with solar and battery. What's to stop these solar companies saying, look, can we help you with your thermal performance of your house? Can we help, hook you up with an insulator? And you were mentioning that some of the insulation companies are actually coming at it from the other direction and going to start getting in on that themselves. So, there is an opportunity for this sort of education bit to be, the government's going to need to do a lot of it, to make sure that happens, as you say. But I think there's a big role for industry, and that it can be another way for the solar industry to sort of broaden its horizons.
I 100% agree. They're like those touch points with consumers are so valuable, and having the opportunity to kind of like do the value add. You roll through the drive-through McDonald's and they don't waste an opportunity to ask you if you want fries and a Coke.
A McFlurry.
So, if you're putting solar on the roof, like I reckon you should be asking, well, do you want a couple of heat pumps and an induction cooktop with that, right? Like,
yeah.
Because it actually makes sense if you think about the house as a system. Throw in the thermal performance as well. Think of the house as a system. How you size the solar on the roof and how you size the appliances in the house and the interaction with the thermal performance. Like, this is where we need to get to. We need to get to the right staging and the right sizing that makes sense for that household. And we need to make it sort of like an integrated conversation rather than a lot of ad hoc conversations. And this is true in terms of the solar programs that we've had historically in Australia. It's also true of the energy efficiency programs that have been run by state governments. Power of good work done through them, but they have tended to be ad hoc upgrades. There has never been a story that's like, I'm selling this thing or I can help you with this thing. It's never been like, this is how it interacts with that, or this is how, this is kind of the order that you should be doing things in. For example, in Ireland, they won't let you put, they have generous incentives for electrifying your space heating, but they won't let you do it unless you do your insulation first, because it doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah, I love it.
So, there's plenty we can do. But this is something you mentioned, All Energy, Energy Efficiency Council, long-standing partner on that event with the Clean Energy Council. And one of the reasons I love that event is because it brings the two sides of the conversation together. And particularly as we electrify, what is electrification? It's kind of like improving energy performance, it's lowering emissions, it's making the best use of those renewable resources. It's bringing the whole conversation together and tying it up into a bow. And there's just no way that we're going to get where we need to without kind of an integrated approach that brings households along for the journey.
Yeah. And on that note, the Energy Efficiency Council, checks notes, is hosting in November, on November 26th, the inaugural Efficient Electric Homes Market Acceleration Summit, which sounds great to me. And it sounds like it's all of those things you were just talking about. How can we, first of all, coordinate all of this and also put a bit of a rocket under it, because it needs to happen a bit faster?
Yeah, that's right. So the Market Acceleration Summits are part of the EEC's new strategy, so that the board signed off back in June. Effectively, we're really orienting all of our work around three distinct markets. They're efficient electric homes, productive net zero businesses, and optimised energy systems. And in each of those areas, over the next 12 months, we're rolling out a market acceleration plan, which is saying, look, in all these areas, we're sort of heading in the right direction. We're sort of like, we know what the direction of travel is. We're just not moving quick enough. And so as an industry association with members, what we're looking to do is kind of like really define what the market outcomes are that we're looking at, like what we want to achieve. And in the case of efficient electric homes, we're talking about the amount of demand that we want take off the grid from homes and putting a number on that, the number of homes that we want to electrify by 2035 to deliver our emissions reduction targets, and then, what we want to achieve in terms of the capability of appliances that we're putting in people's homes so that they have that flex capability. And so we're putting hard numbers against that. And then we're also kind of like laying out the program of work for how we get there, right? And there's things that we need to do in terms of data. There's things that we need to do in terms of policy and programs. There's consumer education. There's a raft of things there. One of the exciting initiatives that we're going to be working through over the next 6 to 12 months is actually doing like a proper policy scorecard, which is looking at particularly like a lot of these regulations and rules are actually at the state level, and we kind of know what states need to do to really get where they need to be in this space. Good holistic incentive programs like we've been talking about, but also like the minimum rental standards that take care of people that are otherwise going to get left behind. There's a raft of different things in the interventions that state governments can do. We're just going to start tracking them and scoring them and ranking them and putting that out there every year, gathering that data and making sure that there's a scoreboard. A bit of competitive federalism is what I'm looking to achieve, Sophie. Because in this space, we kind of know what needs to be done. We just need to start holding ourselves accountable.
Be like electrification, it's a knockout.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can have a minister drop into a vat of water or something.
Now, I'm going to change the subject. I think we've done solar sharer tick, and with some work needed. But you are about to head off to, what is it now, your 5th COP?
This will be my 4th.
Fourth.
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself. And which, I think is fantastic because these things are so important, like you were saying about all energy. Very, very important to hold us to account and remind us of the very, very important overarching mission that we're all on. What are your expectations of Brazil?
So should I explain what a conference of parties is for our listeners?
Yeah, please do.
So the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change kicked off about 30 years ago now. And this was kind of like the international framework under the United Nations for, all nations around the world to collaborate to deal with dangerous climate change. It's been plenty of ups and downs over that journey. But over all of those years, there's been an annual event called the Conference of Parties where all the nations show up to kind of negotiate kind of the collaborative efforts to kind of check in on work streams that have been agreed to previously and also kind of agree future action. And since 2015, the main game has been the Paris Agreement. There's a lot of talk about Paris, and that is just because in 2015 the COP was in Paris, and the agreed text was the Paris Agreement. There'd been a few runs at kind of like global frameworks. The one before that was Kyoto, which had legally binding targets. As it turned out, that didn't work well. And so what we've worked to is this kind of more voluntary sort of collaborative sort of vibe of a thing, which is Paris, which is like every 5 years people put in what is called a nationally determined contribution. And the idea is that the ambition of those contributions, which is effectively how much emissions you're going to reduce by a particular year, that ratchets up and everybody's kind of leaning in. And as they get more confidence in their emissions reduction efforts being successful and they see others sort of raising their ambition, that there's a virtuous circle and we get higher and higher NDCs over time. So the 2035 target that there was so much conversation about a couple of months ago that we in Australia agreed to, the 62 to 70%. That was our nationally determined contribution by 2035. So that's been submitted, and when we arrive in Belém, there's going to be a lot of discussion about all of the nationally determined contributions that have been submitted around the world. What they mean in terms of the ambition that's in the Paris Agreement, which is keeping climate change well below 2 degrees and targeting 1.5 degrees. And what we will find is we're not on track. And there's a lot more work to do. So In terms of the EEC's involvement in all that, we're very engaged on a sort of a subset of all of that work, which is called the Tripling Renewables, Doubling Energy Efficiency Pledge that was agreed a couple of COPs ago at COP28 in Dubai. That was spearheaded by a range of groups, including the Global Renewables Alliance. We were sort of part of the coalition and the willing on the periphery of all that. But that was very much a global effort. 120, 130 countries signed up to that, and then ultimately got into the final negotiating text in UAE, which was the first time, believe it or not, the first time that the words renewables or energy efficiency were mentioned in a formal negotiating text at the end of a COP. We also had wording around phasing out fossil fuels in that text. In retrospect, super significant. And so we're sort of very interested in that part of the agenda and how it's being operationalised. We're also doing some work in anticipation of a potential successful bid for us to host a conference of parties here in Adelaide next year. And so a lot of my time will be spent with global partners, looking at like the opportunity that Australia has to contribute to that conversation. And most of the work we're doing in that space is saying, yes, triple renewables by 2030. Yes, double the rate of energy efficiency improvement by 2030. And we should also be setting a target for electrification by 2035. And we think that's the third leg of the stool. And we're getting a really good response from global partners. We're also talking to the government about the opportunity to kind of champion an electrification target as part of an Australian presidency. And I think its time has come, honestly. I think we've been getting a good response, and that opportunity in a developed country context to shift away from fossil fuel use to electrification, and in a developing country context, some of that, but also kind of leapfrogging over fossil fuels and going straight to, end users that are all electric and powered by renewables. Look, it's a story that works in a whole bunch of different contexts, and we're looking forward to prosecuting it both over the next couple of weeks and hopefully over the next year as we head towards COP31 in Adelaide.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that, it feels like it could really catch on, and it feels like it is the right time, especially here, because with this potential new part of our electricity market, this free window for solar, we really need to focus on, we need to, triple down on electrification. Triple double.
100%. I totally agree. There is it feels like electrification is having a bit of a moment, and we've been talking largely about households, right? But this is also relevant in other economic contexts. If you look at the net zero plan and the sector plans that were released alongside our 2035 target, like electrification is a theme that's shot through every single one of them, whether you're talking about, built environment or resources or manufacturing, transport. Like, it is like a key lever in all parts of the economy. It's not the only thing. Yeah, there's other types of fuel switching that is required, particularly for things like high temperature process heat and the like. There's certain industrial processes that we don't quite have the technology there for electrification yet, but geez, there's an awful lot that is electrification, where that's the most prospective pathway, and just leaning into that is a very smart thing to do.
And having the conversation, again, like you were saying about solar sharer, once you start that conversation, you start to see the demand coming. You see people who haven't even thought of it going, well, I could do that. I could do that on my farm, or I could do that in my, orchard. I could do that. Yeah. So that's how the demand starts coming up. And then you start seeing businesses then going, oh, I can make some money out of that.
Well, that's right. The businesses themselves, and also kind of the aggregators. And this is something, I mentioned that one of our work streams is optimized energy systems. And so, EC's been quite engaged and interested in the Nelson Review, for example, which goes to the market settings that are kind of enabling or not incentivizing this kind of demand side participation. And I talked earlier at the start of our chat about how we've just got to make it easy, particularly for households, but also for businesses, because businesses, They've got actual businesses to run. They don't want to spend all their time thinking about energy either. And so, the role of those aggregators, those businesses that can kind of make it super easy for you to kind of get some of the benefits that you can from what you can deliver to the energy system by sort of shaping your use. You can get into even more responsive practices like demand response, which is responding directly to market signals. Having the right market settings allows those businesses to have a business model that will allow them to support energy users right across the country to play nicely on the grid and be better off as a result. We're really interested at the EEC in terms of that optimized energy system space about making sure that there is the space for those new business models to emerge, whether it's incumbents that are doing new and innovative stuff or new businesses coming in. We're going to need to do things differently in the future grid. And we haven't talked much about networks, but there's a huge amount of opportunity in terms of non-network solutions. And so if you're facing a grid constraint, particularly at the distribution network level, properly interrogating the opportunity to support some upgrades behind the meter to better manage energy use rather than just defaulting to building more stuff onto the network can potentially save you millions and millions of dollars, but it requires like the incentives to be set up properly for those networks, that those networks to have the capability, or there to be other frameworks that ensure that kind of activity is taking place. So there's a lot to work through, and I'm excited because we're launching our market acceleration plan for homes, as you say, in 2 or 3 weeks in Sydney. But we've already we had the first meeting today, as I record, for our optimized energy systems market acceleration plan, and just had the task force of members kind of getting up to speed with what we're trying to achieve. And we're going to have our first workshop in February to kind of really unpick the key levers that we need to pull to get where we need to be in this space. And the good news is governments are really open to this conversation in the way that they haven't been. Certainly in my time at the council, they recognise that reform is needed. They recognise they want the demand side to play. They want to find a pathway through this transition, which is delivering, reliable, low or zero carbon, but also kind of affordable energy. And that's a critical KPI. And I think they recognise that the only way to that world is kind of making sure that efficiency and flexibility is on the field, and that we're making sure that electrification that we need to do is happening in a smart way.
Yeah. And I think the regulators as well, I feel like that's, to me, one of the nicest things about our energy market at the moment. I feel like, because there is a lot of collaboration going on. There's, as you say, so much work to do, but, by and large, everyone seems to be trying their best to get it done and to get to the same spots, with some notable exceptions.
Do you care to comment further, Sophie, on the notable exceptions?
No, I don't. I might wind it up there, Luke.
That's your prerogative.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know how busy you are and you're about to head off overseas, so go forth and keep doing your great work. And I'm really looking forward to checking in with you again in November and to heading to that inaugural summit at the end of the month.
It's been an absolute delight, Sophie. Thanks for the chat.
That was Luke Menzel from the Energy Efficiency Council, and it's a really good discussion. I think what I love, the positive message out of it is we've started a great conversation, as we did with cheaper home batteries, leaving aside all of the other pieces of the puzzle that need to come in to make this work. We have started a discussion about how people can use their energy differently, and how, with a few relatively minor adjustments, some big savings can be made. And so that's a discussion that's well worth having.
And it's really shifted the dial on time of use tariffs as well. So, we were reporting a lot this year how time of use tariffs are just being put on people's bills with no warning, and how people are surprised. But if you do this and you have choice and you can say, oh, I would like to be on a time use tariff because I can get the cheaper power.
And the regulator's watching.
Yeah,
And
suddenly you have agency. And that's, that I think is the biggest gift here, is that giving people agency to say, yeah, I can do that. And I could.
And I bloody well will.
Yeah.
And you mentioned smart meters before. Obviously you need a smart meter to participate, and not everybody has one. And it's a goal of that the I want to say the AMC has set that everyone should have a smart meter by 2030. I think is the goal. So that hasn't been going as well as hoped, I don't think. So this might also hurry that along. Like people might suddenly be thinking, well, people who were, I guess, holding out or because you can request one, and I think your network company is obliged to then make that happen as quickly as possible.
Coming from Victoria, it just seems bizarre to me that people still don't have smart meters.
It does, but it wasn't necessarily a smooth transition here. But we've kind of forgotten all that bit, and we're all a bit smug now and like, we've already got them, so whatever. But yes, it needs to be done, and then yes, a lot of energy efficiency and a lot of insulation. So as I mentioned you in the interview, Rachel, you were a feature regarding your decision to sort of because maybe battery the size that you wanted to get was still a bit pricey even with the rebate, and deciding to instead invest in double glazing, which is a pretty important
well, it was insulation, and now we aren't, because it turns out that maybe our foundations are not as structurally sound.
That ruins my whole example.
Yeah, it ruins our life as well, because it means we have to put off the insulation for another couple of years.
So you're talking about the underfloor insulation?
Yeah.
Which is super important in weatherboard in Australian houses. Yeah, when you don't have a slab, which I don't have.
And so we had too many foundation people come through and say, oh, I'm not sure about this. And we just said, okay, we're not touching it.
Oh, that's really disappointing.
3 years. And then we do a lot of things. We do a big, making it a nice place to live and underfloor insulation. So we've just got to live through 3 more years of drafty, not very nice house. It's so nice and warm outside, and as you can see, I'm wearing my black skivvy. So yeah, it's not warm in here right now.
Oh dear, that's always a bit of a bummer when it's like warmer outside than in. So not everyone happy about solar sharer. Retailers a little bit cranky. Yeah. The Energy Council of Australia did say felt like there wasn't that much consultation, and that this is just kind of, I think they thought it was on the list of would be nice to have, and then it was no, we're doing it. So there is a question a lot of people are asking about what's this going to mean for retailers and retailer margins, and we all know that if retailer margins get squeezed, consumers generally get squeezed somewhere else along the chain. So that's going to be an important little thing to work out as well. Yeah.
I've written a really interesting piece from the Currently Speaking blog this morning, where Declan said, I have already tried the solar sharer. I have already signed up to a time of use plan. And, he bought his smart plugs, which are, necessary to basically participate in this. He bought his smart plugs. He timed all of his energy use to within the free and the cheap periods of time, so the EV charging and all the household appliances, and particularly the heating. And he said, if I was doing this across a year, I would expect to save, I think it was about $960 a year.
Yeah.
But he said that there were some downfalls, that when you are trying to heat your house in a sort of 11 to 2 o'clock window, you've got to heat it quite high to get the lingering effects. And the lingering effects did last until midnight. but he did have to go from, I think it was 12 degrees to 32 degrees in a very short period of time. And that was very uncomfortable and made him hate his life a bit. And so it's that sort of thing where you've got to, you start thinking, this is great. However, you need to sort out the house first. The house needs to be able to be heated consistently without having to go from, outside winter temperature to
and you need to have electric heating, crucially,
that too.
No good gas heater like so many of us do here in Victoria still. So yes, and I think that a lot of houses, quite frankly, don't even have enough electric appliances to make this work at the moment. It's not going to be about just doing a load of washing in that window. That's
well, that's not a huge energy draw.
No, it's not.
My understanding. It's when you put the dryer on, that's the energy draw.
Yeah, and there are things, but as you were saying, to make it a practical solution for the average household, there's going to be a lot of things that come into play. But as Luke was saying, it's great that we're all talking about it, thinking about it. Industry is talking about it and thinking about it because they're going to need to come with a whole lot of solutions. And there'll need to be some more policies to sort of keep driving the shift to electrification and to thermal efficiency. Insulation, double glazing, big conversations we still need to have about so many houses. Now let's talk all energy. That was colossal conference and exhibition last week, I feel like, and I've been to a lot, and that really felt extra last week. What do you think, Rach?
I was so tired at the end of those days. I was passing out.
Yeah.
And I got to walk around a bit more than you did. Which was lovely.
The first day just went by in a flash. It was with the conference and the things to do, and there was a Women in Renewables lunch, which was lovely. So for me, it was a real blur the first day.
Yeah, I thought there was a good mix of industries and companies, big representations from the major solar manufacturers and battery manufacturers and tracking manufacturers. I think I saw one booth with wind, just one. So no representation from wind.
No, and that's been for a while now. I mean, it's quite difficult to, display your turbines at the Jeff's shed. But it's been for a while now that it's been very much solar and battery dominated and EV chargers.
There's already been, I think I've been to 4 or 5 wind conferences this year alone.
Yeah.
And there's been no similar conferences for solar, no sort of soul technology conferences, if you like. But whereas there's been 4 or 5 wind only conferences. So I don't know, maybe they don't need it.
Evens it out.
Yeah, there were a couple of really interesting little companies that I saw there, which really caught my eye.
Tell us.
I wrote about Smartizer, which is this little battery company making batteries that they want to be able, they want renters and apartment dwellers to be able to just easily put them in, and then if you're a renter, take them with you. I don't know, and this is, I was like, this is great because it means that you can tap into that solar sharer.
Absolutely. So battery only is now a thing because that's possibly one of the best things, because you can just set it to charge in those hours and then use that electricity in your peak. So that is great, and it
it's got a few hurdles to cross so far. It's still got to get its battery certified. And there was another company which I'm writing about this week, PowerCap, who does sodium batteries, and they launched their battery this time last year and said, we're going to be all over Australia from January, and still hasn't launched because they have been in certification hell for the last year. And so he's like, January next year, it's going to happen. So, Smartizer's timeline it is just a lithium-ion battery, but their timeline may be a little bit different to what they're hoping for now.
And so what are we talking? You just you plug it in, is it? Or, what? How do you?
Well, the idea is you've got to get a little case for it, just a shelf, I should say, and then you've got to pay for the connection, because you can't just plug it into a power point, as apparently you can in Europe. You've got to get a very specific plug that goes to your mains. So you'd have to pay for that, and that would be I reckon $1,000 cost, which it's like, I don't know if renters are going to want to pay $1,000 every time they move a rental to plug their battery in. But in saying that,
you'd need to have your permission of your landlord, and you'd imagine.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure you could work that out with the landlord and say, look, I have this really cool thing which is going to be an asset for future tenants. Or you could negotiate that. But it's that upfront cost. I was like, I'm not sure whether that will work in that way, but I thought the concept was really cool.
And this is what All Energy is great for. It's just getting all these ideas out there, and there's so much going on in the sort of energy management space as well. Where companies have got all of their hardware and everything, and then they're really focusing in on the software piece and how to manage all of that and how to optimize everything and hook it all together, and vehicle to grid, that's really starting to be talked about a lot, isn't it? And we've got instances of it happening already in Australia, which is pretty good.
Yep. And everyone's like, oh yeah, we don't have vehicle to grid yet. These are the chargers and the battery people, but it's coming.
But it's coming. Yes.
So there's a lot of, since vehicle to grid came in this year, I think a lot of companies have gone, okay, now it's time. It's okay to do this now.
And the main barriers there is it mainly regulatory, or is it also difficult, like the connection process and ticking all those boxes?
It's the connection process, but also it comes down to, I think the main barrier right now is whether the car manufacturer will warrant the battery for that use. And so BYD has done a deal with, was it Amber, where they warranted the batteries of, I think, 50 cars for a vehicle to grid pilot. But it's vehicle to grid will only take off when car manufacturers say, okay, we don't care what you do with the battery. We don't care if you use it to power your house or you use it to power your car. And none of them are willing to just go, take that leap just yet.
Well, it's sort of more about, do they have confidence the battery can do it and not, and still perform to whatever warranties they've set for driving, I guess. Yeah.
Although I did hear, I was writing a bit about this earlier this year. So, and one person said, a home battery is the best possible life for a battery. You just slowly charge it, you slowly discharge it. It's just a wonderful life for a battery. And so if you're using your car battery as a home battery, it's just, you're not requiring that instant power. You're not requiring the fast charges and discharges. You're just giving it a nice, relaxing life. So this should be a no-brainer.
Potentially, I can see some instances where it might not be, and then you've got grid backup and big energy draws and that kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. It shouldn't be too difficult, but we're getting there. Well, I think that's about it for this week, and we've covered a lot, and I feel like after all this time, we needed to. It's very good to be back and to be talking again, and we will try to get back to our fortnightly regularity as soon as possible. So thank you very much for joining me, Rachel.
Thank you for having me as usual.
And thanks to all of our listeners, and thanks to our sponsor Pylon. And yes, we will see you in about a fortnight's time. Bye for now.
Solar Insiders was brought to you by Fronius. From powerful solar inverters and intelligent EV charging to the new Fronius Reserva solar battery, Fronius offers a proven ecosystem that empowers homes and businesses to take charge of their clean energy future. Solar Insiders was also brought to you by Pylon. Pylon provides easy-to-use solar design software for solar installers and retailers, with pay-as-you-go pricing, no monthly costs and no lock-in contracts. Join Australia's top solar companies who trust Pylon to design high-resolution, CEC-ready solar proposals.